If you're a resident in the UK, it's highly probable that you have encountered some of the challenges that are linked with the housing crisis. This could be due to the fact that you've had a tough time locating a house to rent, or because it's becoming increasingly difficult to climb on the property ladder. To show that they're treating this issue seriously, both the Conservatives and Labour Party are eager to make their presence known. For their part, the Conservatives appear to be concentrating on the demand side of the market. They have pledged to provide new mortgages with a 1% interest rate in order to assist younger people in climbing on the housing ladder. Additionally, they have committed to strengthening the rights of tenants through the Renters Reform Bill. Labour, on the other hand, seems to be interested in attempting to go for the supply side. Starmer, in his keynote speech at a conference that took place last year, made a vow that a Labour administration would bulldoze the planning limitations that have been holding the United Kingdom back. As things currently stand, Starmer has not actually provided a great deal of specifics regarding the manner in which he will carry out this task. However, a report that was issued the previous week by a housing affiliate group of the Labour Party and was commissioned by the party itself indicated some of the potential approaches that the Labour Party may take in order to try and help the situation, particularly members of the renting population. Consequently, in this video, we're going to investigate the study, the responses to it, and ultimately whether or not the strategy proposed by Labour has the potential to be successful. The severity of the housing crisis is the first thing that should be seen in this context. It is stated at the beginning of the study that the United Kingdom currently has the lowest rate of home ownership in all of Europe, and that the private leased sector has more than doubled since 1980. This information is provided by the Labour Housing Group. This issue has emerged for a reason that is not difficult to comprehend. The number of homes constructed during the decade that lasted from 2010 to 2020 was the lowest of any decade that has occurred since the Second World War. As a consequence of this, housing needs have emerged as one of the most significant concerns for voters. According to a survey conducted by YouGov on the 13th of May, housing was ranked as the fourth most important policy topic for voters, following only the economy, health, and asylum and immigration. In point of fact, a poll conducted by YouGov in January offers an even more grim picture of the attitudes of the general population towards housing. This demonstrates that people of all ages believe that it will be much more difficult for teenagers to purchase a home than it was for their parents' generation. What's more, if younger people are unable to purchase their own home, the inevitable consequence of this is that they'll have to spend more of their own time and money renting. Now, as we mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, Labour has thus far dedicated itself to attempting to solve this issue by making it simpler to construct homes. Keir Starmer has established a goal that he wants 70% of households to own a home of their own. Now, the first thing that we need to do in order to get there is to construct more houses. But there are other things that are important as well. That being said, we have begun to lay out some of our plans for how we're going to free up the planning system, get the diggers into the ground, and get Britain building again. When it comes to renting, what exactly could Labour do, other than make a vague vow to build more houses and, as a result, make it simpler for individuals to get their feet on the property ladder? In any case, the report that was stated before has a few important suggestions. However, before we go into what these are, it's essential to point out that the study was only created by a group that's linked with the Labour Party, and it does not represent the official policies of the party. On the other hand, it's not out of the question that the party will make use of this research in order to formulate its housing policies in the leading up to the election. The fact that the report is primarily concerned with renting is another topic that should not be overlooked. Let's take a look at what it says, putting the disclaimers to the side for one moment. There are a total of 5 recommendations including the report. The first proposal is that the party should take a holistic approach to housing, which is a recommendation that includes some degree of ambiguity. The second step is to establish and maintain what this organisation refers to as the National Landlords Register, or the NLR. It would be necessary for landlords to sign up for the list, which would make the properties and rent of landlords available to the general public. In addition to that, it would compel them to provide evidence that they're in a conformity with the PRS, Decent House Standard. Although this may appear to be an original concept, the Conservatives are already considering incorporating it into their renters reform bill. This is something that is already being considered. The government has taken the initiative to establish a system known as the Property Portal, which is intended to serve as a single hub that contains information regarding the properties owned by landlords. The most significant benefit of this would be that it would provide prospective tenants with information regarding the quality of the property that they would be renting in the future, in spite of the fact that this would be a significant step forwards for renters and would make the renting market more open. It's not entirely apparent how this would vary from the Tory plan, which is something that is still considered to be rather ambiguous at the moment. The third proposal is to support a prohibition on evictions that are not based on fault, which is something that the Conservatives have indicated they intend to prohibit in the Renters Reform Bill. The research does, however, point out that the law keeps a backdoor open, which means that landlords can evict a tenant without fault, and the report underlines that Labour ought to close this loophole. The fourth opinion is to implement a rent freeze of some form, which is by far the most audacious of all the recommendations on the list. To be more specific, the research recommends that landlords should only be authorised to raise rents on an annual basis, instead of over the course of a tenancy, and with a notice period of 4 months. These increases should be restricted to either growth of local wages or the Consumer Price Index, CPI, whichever is smaller. According to the research, it's standard practice to refer to these restrictions as third-generation rent controls. These restrictions let landlords determine their own rents at the beginning of the lease, but they restrict the manner in which rents can be increased and the times in which they can be increased during the tenure. On the European continent, rent control of this kind is not extremely rare, which is something that should be brought to your attention. According to the findings of a study that was published in the Housing Studies Journal, 10 nations in Europe have implemented some form of rent control that is considered to be of the third generation. Some of the most important nations on the continent, such as Germany, the Netherlands, and Spain, are included in this category. Some people believe that the United Kingdom ought to catch up with other progressive economies, and that this would be a good method of redressing the balance between landlords and tenants. This is despite the fact that the United Kingdom is not exactly the only country in the world that does not have any form of rent control. Rent restrictions, according to the arguments of certain individuals, would have a disproportionately negative impact on landlords, which would, in turn, lead to a decrease in the number of landlords and make the renting sector even more challenging for tenants. In either case, the adoption of this policy will unquestionably strengthen Labour's reputation as a party that advocates for the rights of renters and seeks to restrict the authority of landlords. The fifth and last proposal that is made in the study is for the Labour Party to implement certain new policies that are intended to dissuade landlords from entering the market for short-term rentals or holiday rentals. Aside from the fact that it suggests that the government might equalise the tax treatment for all forms of private letting, the paper does not go into any detail regarding how this could be accomplished. Taking everything into consideration, it would appear that the purpose of the research is to persuade the Labour Party to support measures that more overtly improve the lives of tenants. The only thing we can do is wait and see if any of these proposals are implemented in the time leading up to the general election. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and feel free to comment so we can continue the conversation. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.